Hello, YouTube. Welcome to Live at Lunch. I'm your hostess. My name is Helen Bennett. I'm a coach who works with people struggling with compulsive overeating. And these lives are designed to give you a little taste of freedom every day at lunch. So if you're watching this, consider yourself part of the new Freedom family. I want to grow these lives into a beautiful community. And if you're watching it, I would love you to jump in the comments, send me a little bit of love. Send everybody around us love, anybody struggling with compulsive overeating. I apologize right now if this sound is crackling a lot on this live. I have spent a good 2 hours trying to sort out that problem today. I don't know what it is. So we're just going to roll with it and hope for the best, because life is messy. And the good news about the work that we do is we learn to be imperfect and to be okay with it. So if it is a bit crackly and poppy, I do apologize. I will try and sort that out. But in the meantime, let's use this time incredibly effectively. And what we're going to talk about today is how to tell the difference between hunger and an urge to eat that isn't hunger, and then what to do next. So the work that I do is really important that we understand that a lot of what has driven people to struggle with compulsive overeating, and I'm just jumping straight into the weeds here, is dieting, restrictive eating a lot of the time. Now, granted, there are people that come to me who've never really been on a diet, or that wasn't the trigger that started a vicious cycle of compulsive overeating. Some people come to me and it's always been an emotional relationship with food. But for the most part, the people that reach out, at some point, if we work our way back, we see, there was a moment in time when I went on my first diet, and that's when my relationship with food really started to change. And from there, it might have spiraled out of control. Maybe then what started off as a diet became an emotional escape, and a release valve, and so on and so forth. So that's a little bit more complicated. But we're going to start today with just understanding primarily that in order to change our relationship with food, to reclaim that sense of control, where we're not losing our force of will, where we have intention to do something and we can do it again, or where we don't have to spend all day fighting these urges and these desires to eat. The first thing we've got to do is start eating when we're hungry, because so long as people are on a diet, they're way more likely to overeat. And that's our concept for a whole nother video. And in fact, speaking of which, if you want to find out about that, I would go into the links in the description. All the links you could ever possibly need are there. And the one to check out is the link to the Food Foundation's Masterclass. It is a 90-minute masterclass that's completely free at the moment. You can dive in deep into the entire concept, because compulsive overeating, unfortunately, isn't just stop doing it. There are about 4 key components there, what I call the food freedom formula. You need all 4 components working well in order to start making these massive and permanent changes in your relationship to food. So get the masterclass. And in fact, as part of that masterclass, you'll get a bonus training, which is going to be so important for the topic for today, which is how can I tell the difference between hunger and non-hunger desire to eat, and then what? Okay, so the masterclass, we're going to go deep into that. It's a powerful training. You know, if you prefer things going quickly, put it on double speed, but listen to it nonetheless. Get a pen and paper out and make lots of notes, because there's lots of practical stuff in there, which I just can't cover in a sort of 15-minute live video on YouTube. Okay, so first things first, we've got to stop. We've got to remove all dieting and restrictive eating. Now, I understand that's very scary for a lot of people. That's absolutely fine. But let's assume you're at the point where you're like, you know what, Helen, I'm so done with dieting. I will do anything to change this relationship I have with food. I'll do anything to feel like I'm in control again, even if it means just removing the diet, which maybe makes me feel safe. That is a topic for another day. I should make a note. But let's assume you're coming at this video thinking, you know what, I'm ready, let's do it. Now you're like, well, I can't tell the difference, Helen. Is this hunger or is this some kind of compulsion? That is such a good distinction. And you're going to be so clear on it today. So the first thing to know is hunger always comes from the belly. It's what I call the tummy. Hunger comes from down here. and it's talking to us. And when it's gets really, when you're at a sort of level 10 hunger, you'll know, because your body will start to growl and grumble. Now, I understand a lot of people, if you've been heavily restrictive and incredibly skilled at ignoring that signal, this could be more challenging for you. But most people with a lot of work and consistency do really start to hear that signal. And when we do, it's so exciting. And that's when you'll be deploying, when you hear that hunger signal, that grumbling and growling, that sort of emptiness. Or let's put it this way, I'll tell you what it's not. It's not feeling neutral. It's not feeling like there's nothing there. And it's certainly not feeling full. Now, we all really know what full feels like. Full is heaviness. It's distended. It can be uncomfortable. It can feel like a leaded weight is inside you. And that feeling is a hard one to miss. So if you're unsure of exactly the sensation of hunger, then neutral, you could probably err on the side of, I'm either neutral or I'm getting hungry, and maybe give it an hour or two and then check again. But it's best to just err on the side of caution with this one, because I tell you one thing for sure, is fullness is unmistakable. So the first thing you do is, hunger comes from the belly. Urges, non-hunger urges, compulsions, emotional eating, eating that's just reactive to an emotion, yes, but reactive to a thought, eating to escape, eating to think clearly, eating to bring down anxiety. That eating signal is never coming from the tummy. Assuming you're feeding yourself well, assuming you're doing your tummy check-ins, the skill that I teach in the masterclass, and you're feeding yourself well so that you're pretty much sitting at the neutral to slightly full or slightly hungry zone, then anything else that screams at you, we got to eat now, is probably a non-hunger urge. And that's where we do the work. This is where the overeating begins, right? Because we couldn't be overeating if we're eating appropriately for our body. And believe it or not, your body is sending you magical, amazing signals. And if you follow the advice that I give in that masterclass and you practice the training that comes with it, you will be astounded at how intelligent and how clear your body is telling you what it would like to eat today, if anything, depending on the time, etc., and how much you've eaten the day before. When we actually take a moment to listen and we learn how to, because to be fair, a lot of us were overriding those signals for so long, we have to relearn the skills sometimes. But for many people, it's quite quick to pick up. And once you have the wording of exactly how to sort of think or speak to your body in order to get that clear signal from you, you will be amazed by how quickly you are able to feed your body appropriately. And then every hunger urge or every urge to eat, because there's a difference, every urge to eat that has nothing to do with hunger, now that you're getting really clear at what hunger is, that's where we do this intervention. And those are the urges that we're trying to work through. Now, the first thing you really need to, there's so many first things. The thing you need to know when you realize, that desire to eat, that's not hunger. Now, I like to call those binge urges, but feel free to give them another name. It's just it's very clear that there's a difference between I'm wanting to eat that has nothing to do with hunger versus I'm really hungry and I'm wanting to eat. And the hunger urge comes from the belly, but the binge urges, the non-hunger compulsions, happen everywhere else. So what I'd love you to do, if you're listening to this video and you want to implement something, and I recommend action, is today, see if you can notice one of those non-hunger urges and take a moment to notice where you are feeling it. A non-hunger urge, I always think, is more like an emotion. You'll feel it maybe in your head, or there's a lot of energy, or your heart rate's up, or it's kind of a buzzy, frustrated, almost like it's about to explode kind of feeling. It's sort of up here, it's buzzy, it's hectic. But it's very rarely, non-hunger urges almost, do they ever not come from the belly? Yes, there's one example where people might say it's sort of in the belly, but it's still not hunger. It's a sadness, a loneliness, or when people are trying to fill a void, more of an empty feeling. And people just want to fill that up. But that's almost lower than the belly. It's a deepness and a despair. And it has a very specific physical imprint. So what you do, as you can imagine, through all this work, is you start to connect with your physical body again. We've got to get our minds out the way and notice what's going on in here. And with practice, you'll begin to find your specific set of physical signatures that are telling you, hey, this is hunger versus this is a non-hunger urge. The non-hunger urges are the ones we have to get through. And that's where it gets complicated and difficult because they're so compelling. Those urges they can be so demanding that it's hard to focus sometimes because all you want to do is give in to the urge. It's like scratching an itch, right? You just want to give in. And if you give in, you'll feel better. You'll get that feeling. So one of the things I suggest, and I explain this beautifully, I explain it in the masterclass as well, is as soon as you catch a non-hunger urge, you always want to do exactly the same thing every time without fail. And the more you can always do the same thing, the better, because you will train yourself. Now, what I trained myself to do is to get my attention back to whatever I was doing. So if I've noticed let's say today, I have a non-hunger urge to eat. If I'm doing my YouTube live, I just got to get really focused on my YouTube live. If I'm, washing the dishes, get really focused and intensely think about washing the dishes. It's amazing how when we put our energy into something, our focus and attention, we are distracted enough oftentimes for that urge to subside. As far as we understand it, that urge is a rise in dopamine. It's your body sending you a signal and a motivation. So dopamine is not the pleasure molecule or hormone. It's a molecule that motivates you to do a behavior where there's an expectation of a reward at the end. So it's the motivational signal. And that urge that you feel when you just want to eat, but it's not hunger, but it's really compelling. That's the dopamine going, woohoo, we're about to do that thing. I always think about it, I think I've heard this somewhere. It's a bit like when you're a kid in the back of the car and your mum and dad are like, yeah, we're going to the fairground or whatever. After school, we're heading off to your favorite playground. And you're thinking, yeah, let's go. And then you're halfway there. And then your parents go, actually, no, sorry, kids, not going anymore. And all of that excitement, that energy, that woohoo, that was the dopamine, getting excited in expectation of what was to come, motivating you to go to the playground, getting you up and ready for it. But the minute you say, no, sorry, we're not going to give you that thing that you were looking forward to, what happens? Big fat dopamine sulk. And it doesn't feel good. So when you catch these urges, that feeling that you're feeling, that rising feeling is dopamine. As you get good at not giving into them, the urges, the energy will sink. And you might get that feeling of, ugh. And nobody wants to feel that way. And what's the best way out of feeling yuck? Is to eat often. So what I encourage people to do is to get all your focus and energy off the thought of eating. Make the decision to get focused back on whatever it is you're doing. Because a lot of people say, oh, give me some alternative coping mechanisms. I can do that. I can tell you to meditate. I tell you to go for a walk. But the best thing you can do is reclaim the life that you're missing out on in this compulsive relationship with food. Usually, just sending your attention back to whatever that you're doing will work. And you'll be distracted enough that energy, the dopamine will sink lower, and maybe it'll kind of drop even a bit lower. But you know what? You're distracted. You're focused. You're doing what you're doing. You're having a conversation with somebody. You're doing the dishes. You're washing your face. Whatever it is, you're going, doing the shopping. Whatever it is that you're doing at that time, just get your focus intently back onto that. It's getting your focus back to life. That's what I want you to always do. So you only ever have to think, what was I doing? Let's get back into that and get heavily focused into it. In a pinch, if that's not working, I would suggest doing what I call a Freedom 15. Freedom 15 is 15 minutes of doing anything at all, and you can choose. And if you're going to spend 15 minutes, you may as well make it enjoyable. 15 minutes doing anything you want, but not eating. So the commitment for Freedom 15s is I can feel this is a non-hunger urge to eat. This is what I'm trying to break. If it's really intense, I'm going to just commit for 15 minutes to hold off on giving in. If at the end of 15 minutes, I really, 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 really want to eat, then I can give myself full permission to go for it, even if it was a full-on binge. There's something so powerful about that 15-minute window and the permission slip at the end, that chances are you'll think, well, if I'm going to do 15 minutes, look at a clock, look at your phone, just check the time. Don't set an alarm. That'll wake you up. If we don't want you waking up. If you manage to get away from the urge, we don't want you to wake up and think about it again. But just commit in your mind, 15 minutes. That's all. I'm going to hang in there for 15 minutes. And because you've made that commitment yourself, you'll find a way to entertain yourself. And I'd argue that you'll probably find a good one because you'll want to be distracted, and you'll probably find a really enjoyable one. I hear, well, if I'm going to do 15 minutes, I may as well just make it enjoyable because the urge can be such a suck fest of dopamine raging and sulking and raging and sulking that you may as well, if you're going to ride out those 15 minutes where it can be quite intense, you may as well find something fun to do. And it's amazing how creative you will get around that. And sometimes it'll be a coping mechanism. Sometimes it'll be, I'm going to meditate, I'm going to go for a walk, I'm going to have a bath. That's great, right? Because the chances are that 15-minute window and the permission slip at the end will help you break the cycle. But you have to give yourself permission. If at the end of 15 minutes, the urge to eat is unbearable, I'd rather you give in to that urge and then just stay conscious enough to watch what happens. I'm not sure if I said this in the last live that I did, but your ability to just be curious and interested and intrigued like a researcher in this whole process is going to pay such dividends. Because if you're going to give yourself permission to eat and then self-flagellate for being weak or lazy, no. Just put that to one side. If you're going to give in to the urge, stay conscious, stay present, watch what's going through your mind, watch the thoughts that you think, watch the emotions that are coming up for you, watch maybe the relief that you feel from eating. Or what if you notice that when you eat, actually, it wasn't as enjoyable as you thought it was going to be? Just doing that work alone, you're going to start learning some pretty cool stuff about yourself. But the first thing is to understand the difference between when you're eating for hunger versus when you're eating because of hunger urge. These are the urges we're trying to break. This is where the real work happens of breaking of food freedom. It's learning how to sit with the discomfort of the urge to eat, that compulsion to keep eating, even though you know you're not hungry. And then we get deep in the weeds to try and understand what was driving those in the first place. And actually, in that space of compulsion is where, if you're working with a coach or a therapist or whatever, the stuff that comes up for you, the thoughts that you begin to think, the emotions that you're feeling, all of it's so important. On that note, if you are not working with somebody, I'm going to highly recommend it, because working with somebody to help you understand what's been driving this bus all this time is actually where you make the deep change. Because if we don't do that work and we just blame the food and we just try to stop eating when we're not hungry, the chances are we're missing what was driving this whole cycle in the first place. And you can do that and get away with it. You can keep practicing just what we've explained in this video. It will break that habit cycle. Eventually your brain will rewire. It'll realize, it's not going to get away with that anymore. It will do that for sure. But if what was driving the bus all along was really toxic, negative internal dialogue, oftentimes, beliefs that are not serving you, trauma from the past that's reemerging and you wanting to escape from it, or maybe you're unfulfilled and you don't know what your life's purpose is and you just want anything to make you feel better, or you're in a bad relationship or a bad career. You see why this can be very complex. But in that space of compulsion is actually where all the answers lie. And it's so important to do the deep work to work this stuff out, because that's how you solve the root cause. Otherwise, there's a good chance you will just start reaching for other things. Your addiction jump from, maybe you used to be a compulsive eater, now you're great at not eating when you're not hungry, but then you find yourself scrolling relentlessly on Instagram or whatever. So in that space is where I'm going to beg you practically to get help to figure out what was driving the need to escape with food. because 9 times out of 10, that's what it is. Sometimes it is just habit wiring. Every day at 5 o'clock, you always used to do something until you always want to do it for a little while until you break the habit. That's relatively easy. But with food, it's usually not that simple. With food, there's usually 1, 2, 3, maybe 4 or 5 really powerful things that have been driving that cycle. And when you do the work on those, that's when not only do you get through the compulsions and then the brain rewires, but you also get the benefit of doing the deep healing. So you don't just jump to another addiction, another compulsion. Next thing you're a shopaholic or a gambling addict, or that there will be something that you might, if we don't do the deep work, deep healing of what drove the bus in the first place, chances are you're going to jump to something new to escape the feeling and the pain that was causing you to eat for non-hunger reasons. That's the key. Okay. I'm going to wrap it up there. I hope if you watch this and you get some value from it, please smash the like button, because that will help this content get to other people who really need to hear it. I will be back on Wednesday. I'll be back on Friday, same time, same place. I'd love you to join me. And if you were thinking of working with me ever, you may not be ready now, but if you are, then in the link in the description, you'll find all the links you need. The most specific one for working with me is you can jump on a quick call with me. Let's see if we're a good fit. Let's see if you are committed and ready to do all the work, because there's a lot of work involved, and if you have the time availability. And if it's a yes on both sides, then great, we can chat about working together. So that's at my website, helenbennett.co/call. Easy peasy. All right. Smash the like button if you've got a bit of value from this. Subscribe if you haven't already, and share it with somebody who needs to hear it, because this channel is for anyone who feels like they eat in an out of control fashion, whether that's just occasional snacks in it, or whether you're struggling with something more aggressive. But I promise you the method is the same and it works the same. So in many ways, I feel grateful for the big struggles I had, because it gave me the tools and the strategy to help people who maybe aren't struggling, or maybe we can catch it early before it spirals into something worse. All right, Freedom Family, I look forward to Wednesday. I have got so much to speak about. I think we could do lives for the rest of my life, and I would never be short of things to touch on this topic. Grab the masterclass. I think you're going to love it, and I will see you on Wednesday. Cheers, Freedom Fam.